Master event handling in JavaScript for cleaner, more dynamic JavaScript for Lightning Web Components. Welcome everyone. In today's session, we are going to talk about event handling in JavaScript. So without wasting any time further, let's proceed with the video. Now the first things first, what is an event? I've already talked about event in one of my previous video, but let me tell you, any action taken by the user on the interface is an event. So events are user or system actions that can be click, that can be form submission, or that can be a keystroke. Now why we have to learn event handling? So it is essential for making applications interact. So web applications are something we all are usual to work with. And we know why web applications are famous because of their interactiveness, because they interact with the user on their clicks, on their form submissions, on their focus move from one point to another. So hence, if we want to make interactive applications, event handling is something that we should be thinking of. Now, it is also a key to build responsive UIs in LWC. And as the course is residing on LWC, knowing about events and event handling is very important. So let's see some basics of handling events in JavaScript. Whether you are handling events in JavaScript or anywhere else, there should be two things that are important other than the event itself. The first is event listener and second is event handler. Now event is actually that specific action which happens. Now event listener is a body that will listen to that specific moment of time when that action is happening, and then the listener will actually tell to the handler. Now handler is the body that contains the code that is to be executed when the listener will tell that the event occurred. So this is the whole cycle between event listener and event handler. So as I said, event listeners listens to the code for an event and trigger a function when it occurs. So here is the syntax how you can add an event listener, and then also you can tell about the handler over there. Now handlers are nothing but functions that run in response to an event. So when that event occurs, then that handler executes. Now enough of talking. I think we should see all that stuff practically. Okay guys, so here we are on our VS Code and you can see that I have created a folder event handling. Inside that folder I am having intro.html and intro.js. Now intro.js, I haven't written anything yet over there. Inside intro.html, what I have done is I have created a form with few form elements. Let me show you what are these on the form itself. So to execute this, all I need to do is to click on the go live at the bottom right. Here's the output and let me show it side by side. So you can clearly see other than the heading, I am having an input box which is to accept a user ID and a password box which is to accept a password. They both are the text box, and then a login button. Now user can take plenty of actions over here, like user can enter here anything on this box or this box. User can move from one box to another by pressing tab, or user can click on this button. Now let me tell you about the easiest one of all these events, which is the click one. Okay. Now the basic way of handling events is to add an attribute in the HTML part itself. Now let me show you that. Now in this button, let me just add a space over here. I'm adding one on event attribute. Now this on event attribute is something where we provide on and then the name of the event for which we want to provide the handler. So this on is nothing but a way of creating a listener. So here I am saying on click, that means I am telling that listen to the click event, and then to this equal to I can provide a JavaScript method. Here I am just simply writing down console.log because I just want to show you how event is listened and handled, and here I am printing login clicked. And let me save this. Now if I click on this button, something might have been printed in the console log. So for that, let's open the console log, right click here and click on inspect, and then click on console, and here you can see login clicked is printed. So whenever I will click on this button, that login click will be printed. Let me clear this and click again. You can see that. So this is the event that is happening when I am clicking over here. This is a way of listening, right? I won't say this is exactly a listener, it is actually an attribute, but the thing that it is doing here is listening to that specific event, and then this is the handler. Now generally handlers are functions, so we will create functions over here, and I will use an addEventListener method to actually add a listener to a specific component. But before that, let's go to the slide. Now addEventListener, how it works. So basically, there can be different types of events that you can be dealing with. It can be click, it can be change, it can be key down. Now, whomsoever event type you are dealing with, that specific event type name you have to mention as a parameter to this addEventListener method. So addEventListener method is called by an element. This is a DOM element or any specific document object model element, where individual tags that are there in the HTML are treated as an object or an element. Okay, so here element is some kind of element, then dot addEventListener is the method name, and then the first parameter that is passed over there is the type of the event. After that, we will mention the name of the function. So this function is nothing but a handler or event handler. So this will be called as soon as the click event will happen on this specific element. What's the benefit of using addEventListener? Now the way I have done the event handling is not an ideal way of event handling, because there I am using JavaScript directly in line of HTML. But if you are going to use addEventListener, the code will be cleaner and it will separate your HTML and JavaScript. In fact, it allows multiple listeners for the same event. I will show you how, but before that, let me show you how to work with addEventListener. Okay guys, so I have added few JavaScript code. Before showing that, let me remove this on click from here. And you might have noticed that I am using ID for individual input box. So let me add separators so that you can easily see those things. So here you can see there is an input box with the ID user ID. Now what I have done here in the JavaScript part is I first fetched that specific element whose ID is user ID. Now this specific stuff is possible in JavaScript, and if you don't know that, don't worry, we will cover up all this. But here, after fetching the reference of that specific element, I have called that addEventListener method. I passed the key down event and I provided the handler. Handler is nothing but a function which is defined down there. This way of passing a function is callback functions, and the concept of callback is also covered in that crash course itself. But to understand now, you can understand it like whenever you are passing a function inside a function parameter, we don't use parenthesis for the function name which is passed as parameter. Now let's see whether it will work or not. Now let me just refresh over here, and now you can see it is saying that cannot read property addEventListener. It is saying that this property addEventListener is not readable. And the reason for that might be because the script that we are loading here for the JavaScript, that script we are loading in the head part, and the form is getting loaded later on. So if I will pass this script over here after the form, the error will be gone. Now let's see what will happen if I press any key in the user ID field. So let me press, and you see it is printing key is down on user ID. And if I will keep on typing, so I have typed almost 30 characters because that specific handler have been called for 30 times. Now one more interesting thing over here. Here in this key pressed event handler, if I pass a parameter, let's suppose event, now you can name it anything, and if I print that event, see what is printed. And now after saving, let me type something in the user ID. So as soon as I type, see what it is printing. It is showing that event here. So it is clearly telling that this is nothing but an object, and this object is having plenty of properties. Out of all these properties, there is a property key, and this property is actually telling me about the key which is printed. Also, it is telling me the key code of this specific key. Well, I won't go in the detail of the key code for now, but if I want to know which key is being printed, then definitely I should type in event.key, because if you remember in the concept of objects, I told you for any property of an object you want to access, you can use dot and the name of the property. Now if I save this and type in anything now, you see it is telling me which key I am printing, even small or capital. Even when I am printing shift, it is telling me that shift is printed. If I am pressing caps lock, it is telling me that caps lock is printed. So this is the magic of event handling. Event delegation. Now, event delegation is a technique to handle events for multiple elements by listening on a single parent element. Now, if there are multiple elements like parent and child, And if there is any event listener on the parent and similar kind of event happens on any of the child, then the parent will be able to listen to that. And that's simply awesome. I will show you that practically. Now, when to use this concept? It is basically used for dynamically generated content. So whenever you want to generate content dynamically, that time this is very handy. So when there are multiple child elements, you instead of creating different event handlers for them, it is best to have one single event handler for the parent, and there we can filter out which specific child have been clicked. So instead of talking on this, let me show you that practically. Okay guys, so you can see I have created one more file, delegation.html, where I am having one div with the name id as parent, and then inside that I am having three childs. They are siblings because they are child of the same parent. Now I named them as child 1, child 2, child 3, and the ID of them are also equivalent. Like the ID of the parent is parent and the ID of these childs are child 1, child 2 and child 3. Now in the delegation.js, you can see first of all I have taken the reference of the parent and then I have added an event listener over here. Now here I have used the concept of arrow function. I have already talked about arrow function in one of the previous video, and if you haven't watched that yet, I will recommend you to go and watch that video first, then only you will understand how this function is working. But this whole arrow function that I have created over here I am passing event. Now each event is an object which has the information about the event, right? So the event is having a target property, and the target property has the information about the target of the event. So if I call that inside console log, that will give you clear understanding. So let me call the event.target over here, save it, and then go and click on any of those paragraphs. But before that I have to open that. So let me remove this intro.html from this path and click on delegation.html. Here are the three. Now let me click on child 1. And here you can see first of all the element, the whole element is printed. That's what event.target is doing. It returns the whole element, okay, the target of the event. But the interesting point over here is the listener that I have added was not on this child, was actually on the parent. But when I click on this child, that specific listener listened to it as well. So what I can do is here I can filter out which of the paragraph have been clicked by using this target. So because the target is returning the whole element, if I call target.id, it will return me the ID of that specific element. And that's what I have done here in if. I have called event.target.id, which is returning me the ID, and then I'm comparing it with the ID of those individual elements. And hence when I'm clicking on child 1, it is printing child 1 clicked. Clicking on child 2, it is printing child 2 clicked. And clicking on child 3, it is printing child 3 clicked. Event bubbling and capturing. Now event bubbling and capturing are actually the way in which we can add event listeners. Basically they both seems to be same, but they are different. Have you ever tried throwing a small piece of pebble in a pond? What happens? Actually small waves starts coming out over there, right? Small waves formation. There are two types of formation over there. Okay. Now let me tell you about that. But before that, let me tell you about event flow phases. Now, if I am listening with the event capturing approach, in that scenario, the event travels from root to the target. So root is nothing but the parent, right? So event basically travels from parent to that specific target. Target is actually where the event occurred. And in bubbling phase, what happens is events bubble up from the target back to the root. Now there is an example of bubbling, and we can stop that event bubbling by using event.stop propagation. What is the practical implications? It helps in controlled propagation of events in LWC application. So if we are going to use this stop propagation, it will help us in LWC to have controlled propagation. But let's see how these two types of propagation works. Okay guys, so here you can see I have created one propagation.html where I am having three divs. Okay, the first one is the outer, which is having a text outer. Inside that I am having one middle, which is having the text middle, and inside that I am having inner, which is having the text inner. Now in the JS file, I first took the reference of those three outer, middle and inner divs. Then I added event listener over here for the click event. Now I want to make it in the capturing propagation. So for that I have to pass one more parameter, the third parameter to this add event listener, and that is true. Now because it is working in capturing, let me show you how it works. So let me open propagation.html and let me click on middle one. So you can see it is coming from outer and then it reached middle. Let me clear this and click on the inner. So it is coming outer, middle and inner. Let me clear this and click on outer. So only outer is printed. So basically it flows from the parent till the target. That's it, and there it stops. Wheresoever is the target, there it stops. But what happens if I change it to the default one, which is the bubbling one? For that, all I need to do is to remove this third parameter and save this. Now let me click on inner. So it is printing inner, middle and outer. After clearing this, let me click on outer, it is printing outer only. Let me click on middle, it is printing middle and then outer. So it is going from the target to the parent. Custom events in JavaScript. Custom events are actually those events which are not already available, but we create these events for our own business requirement. Now, why to use custom events? Custom events allow components to communicate. This basically happens in LWC. In Lightning Web Components, we will use the concept of custom events whenever we want to communicate between the components. Now, how to create a custom event? Just like creating a variable, all that you need to call is to call the custom event constructor. So you will call new custom event, and to that you will pass two things. First, you will pass the event name, and second, you will pass an object which will be nothing but information or parameter to this specific event. And after that, you just need to dispatch the event. So let me show you practically how you are going to deal with custom events. Okay guys, so here I created one more file with the name customevents.html. Here I am having one paragraph with an ID myElement and just including the script. Here in the script, what I did was I created a custom event first. So let me just change the line over here and a separator. So you can see I created a custom event variable. First thing I pass is the name of the event and then I pass an object to it. Now the object will have one property detail, and to this detail property we can pass any object. To this detail I just passed a message. What I did now is I taken the reference of myElement and I dispatched this specific event. Now when the event will be dispatched, it should be listened and it should be handled, right? So that part we will not cover up in this video, but in LWC we are going to do this a lot of times. So don't worry about that. But this is how you basically create a custom event and you basically dispatch it. Now practical tips for event handling in LWC. First of all, keep event names descriptive. Don't write down small names. If you are creating your own custom event, make the name descriptive so that the other developers can also understand it. Limit direct DOM manipulation. So try to utilize more add event listeners and stop utilizing inline JavaScript in HTML. And also, when you are doing event listening, do the error handling part over there. Always use try catch over there for any kind of potential errors. Now that marks the end of this video. See you soon in the next video. Till then, thank you and take care.